Hi everybody and welcome back to the Aqua Open Source YouTube channel. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Anais Urlichs. I'm the open source developer advocate here at Aqua, and this video is focused on Tracee users and people who want to get started with Tracee and access Tracee logs. So Tracee collects information from the Kubernetes nodes, for instance, in that case, and synthesizes, gathers this information and keeps them in the pod. Now, you can query the logs of the Tracee pods. You could totally do that. But the more logs you have in those pods from Tracee, the more difficult it will be to actually access all of those logs and actually know what's going on and filter those logs and so on and so forth. Basically, if you have large amounts of logs, number of logs from your different applications, you want to have a solution, a logging solution that allows you to filter them based on time, based on different events, and similar. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Loki and Promtail from Grafana to access Tracee logs in Grafana itself. Let's get started. If you are completely new to Loki, I highly suggest you to check out this talk that I gave with Alex Jones on learning the tricks of Loki, distributed logging at scale. We use Loki at Civo Cloud. Civo Cloud is a Kubernetes service provider where we basically managed hundreds of tenant clusters and had thousands of logs from those tenant clusters, and we used Loki to manage them. So do check out this talk. It's a really good talk, and I like to have the views go up even more. Anyway, so yeah, do check that out. Now, here's Promtail. Promtail is part of Grafana Labs. It's an open source tool that you can basically use. You install it on each of your nodes. Basically, when you install Promtail, a pod runs on each of the nodes and gives us the logs, in short. And then Loki also runs in your cluster and collects all of the logs from Promtail and forwards it to Grafana itself. There are some other videos linked in the description. Also, the talk just mentioned here, linked in the description as well. So do check that out if you're completely new to Loki and you would like to learn more about Loki and Promtail. Now, what is Tracee? Tracee is our runtime security and forensic tool using eBPF. Tracee also runs once you install it on each node and tracks basically kernel level processes on each node within your Kubernetes cluster. That's my definition of what Tracee does. So we are going to install Grafana, Promtail, Loki, Tracee inside of our cluster. And my cluster is running here within DigitalOcean. It's really a 2-node cluster. It's a really simple cluster. I chose 2 nodes, not because it's not going to be high availability cluster. But I want to show you basically with the 2 nodes how you can ultimately, like how Promtail and Tracee run on each node and things like that. And then we have here using Promtail, Loki, and Grafana to access Tracee logs. This is a tutorial that's going to be merged into, or it has maybe at this point of publishing this video already been merged into the main documentation of Tracee. So when you are here at Tracee, head over to the documentation. And in the documentation, head over to tutorials. It will be added right here. So Tracee we won't need right away. What we will need, however, is the kube-prometheus-stack chart. And the kube-prometheus-stack chart is part of the Prometheus community charts. So basically, once you have access to your cluster, which we do, here's our 2-node cluster running in DigitalOcean. There are no namespaces yet. Once we have that, we want to get a monitoring namespace. And in that monitoring namespace, we are now going to install Grafana. Now, I love the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart. I generally install all of my resources for Helm, so we're going to use that because it's just the easiest way of using the resources, because we will need to do some modifications. So basically, the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart is a chart that ships Grafana and Prometheus both together, because usually if you're using Prometheus, you also want to use Grafana. If you're using Grafana, you also want to use Prometheus. Usually, if you're on the open source side of logging and metrics and all those stuff. Okay. So what we first need to do, however, is create a Grafana config.yaml file, any YAML manifest. You can name it however you want. You can name it test.yaml, you can name it grafana.yaml, whatever you feel like it, whatever you fancy. Create a new file called Grafana config YAML, for example. I have that here, and you need to add that content into that file. Now the content is also, didn't want to zoom in here, is also in the tutorial. So what does that content actually tell you? So first of all, we need to make some modifications to the Prometheus chart. And within the Prometheus chart, we need to set Prometheus, then Prometheus-stack, the service monitor, selector nil uses Helm values to false. Otherwise, Prometheus cannot discover new service monitors within your cluster. Okay, so you need to set, this is a really important value that is kind of need somebody to tell you that you need to set it to false. Otherwise, Prometheus will not be able to pick up service monitors within your cluster. So if you want to use different services, service monitors, and send metrics to Prometheus, you need to set that to false. Then within the Grafana Helm chart, we have the default data source enabled to true, set to true. And then we have here the Loki data source added. We need to add the Loki data source to Grafana. So Grafana knows that there's a data source from Loki that it needs to pick up. And basically, we have here the endpoint where Grafana needs to pick that up. This is the name of our Helm installation, Helm chart. I will show you that later on once we install it. And this is the namespace that it's installed in. And this is the port of that service pod that it's running, okay? And we need that information. Otherwise, Grafana cannot pick up the logs that are collected by Loki, okay? So you need to set this up, otherwise it doesn't work, okay? This is the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart. All of the resources are also linked below as well as in the tutorial. Now here you can find how you can add the Helm chart repository with all of the Helm charts within, including the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart to your Helm chart repository list that you have locally, and then how you can install it. You basically say Helm install, then the release name that you want to give it, and the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart within the Prometheus community. Oof, lots to say. Anyway, you can find all of the values that I just told you need to change in here, okay? So if we look, for example, through data sources, is that it? Data sources, default data source enabled true. You can find that here within the values YAML file, and you can find that this is within the Grafana Helm chart. You can find the different parts to it, also where to add the data source, okay? So this is all, basically, I know how to define this based on looking on the values YAML file within the Helm chart. If you've never worked with Helm, I highly suggest you to check out Helm, because this is the easiest way to install all of the different resources. But ultimately, Helm should be installed. You should have access to Helm. And once you have access to Helm, we can add the kube-prometheus-stack chart, the repository. So we need to actually go to here, edit. So I'm just going to copy paste all of the commands. So now it tells me it already exists as part of my Helm chart repository list, but I can say Helm repo update. And this is updating all of the Helm chart repositories that I have access to, that I have my Helm CLI connected to, okay? So now we have this. We have set up our Grafana config YAML file. Amazing. We have updated all of our Helm charts, and now we can install the kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart with this command. I'm basically specifying I want to upgrade or install, if it's not yet installed, the Prometheus community kube-prometheus-stack Helm chart. This is the release name, prom. So make sure you choose a release name that you can remember. For example, we want to install it in the monitoring namespace, and we want to specify that it should overwrite the default values YAML manifest of the Helm chart with our custom values that we specified. Okay, so I had some issues with my previous installation. So I created a new Kubernetes cluster, a 3-node cluster this time. It doesn't matter how many nodes, but what I did is I changed it to version 1.25, 24 of Kubernetes before I had 1.25 of Kubernetes and it didn't work. So it might be a bit moody, that installation of the kube-prometheus-stack Helm Chart, but I can promise you it's used across the board really. So we have just installed the kube-prometheus-stack Helm Chart here. So we can look at all of our resources by accessing everything that's in the monitoring namespace. Keep getting it all in namespace monitoring, and as you can see, there are lots of resources running. We have the alert manager for Prometheus, which basically you can define if you would, for example, Slack notifications if something happens that Prometheus knows about, right? Then we have Grafana, we have the kube-prometheus-stack operator pod, we have metrics pod, we have node exporter, so these basically run on each of the different nodes and forward any metrics to Prometheus. Something similar is going to happen with Promtail. So we're going to install Promtail next. For Promtail, we also need separate configuration because Promtail needs to know where is the Loki API endpoint to push information to. And a server port is 8080, and this is the URL. It's also defined here in the guide, so you can set up a Promtail config YAML manifest and provide the configuration file into that. Now we're going to install Promtail. For that, you have to add the Grafana Helm Chart repositories. Okay, repository list. So Grafana has several different Helm charts. They are in the Grafana Helm Chart repository list. So we're going to add that. We're going to do a Helm repo update again to make sure we have the latest of all of our Helm charts. And now we can go ahead and say we want to install Promtail in our cluster. So we're going to say Helm upgrade install. So if it's not if it's installed already, upgrade it. If it's not installed yet, then install it. Then we name it Promtail the release. It's the Promtail chart within the Grafana repository list. Here's our values YAML manifest, and it's a namespace monitoring. So this is going to install the Promtail Helm chart. Now, if we now get everything that's in the monitoring namespace, we should see 3 additional pods being added here for Promtail. So these pods are just being created, and they are one on each node running. If I open up everything in K9s, which is an amazing tool that I highly suggest everybody to use, and I open up the namespace, I go to monitoring, I can see my Promtail one, and I can see that it's on each of the different nodes, F, M, and Q. And so it's basically there and able to collect the different logs from all of those different nodes. So from all of the pods that are running on those different nodes. Now that we have that, we need to install the Loki chart as a final thing. So we're going to install Loki. Loki is... No. So we're going to install Loki. Loki is actually going to install lots and lots of different components. And they are all explained in the presentation I showed you at the beginning. So do check that out. It's installing the gateway, the ingester, the distributor, the query, the query front end. If you want to know what each of those components are for, check out my previous videos, all linked in the description. Anyway, now we can look at K9s again, just to make sure everything is being installed. And here you can say that the different Loki containers are just being created and are running within our cluster. So everything here is running. Now that everything is running, we have to make sure that Grafana can actually access this as a data source, that everything is actually working how we intend it to be working, right? So all of these components have been installed. So this should be all running within your cluster, all of these different components now. Now we can access Grafana. I'm going to do that now. We're going to access Grafana. So port forward to localhost 3000. You will be led to this beautiful login window. Now the username is admin and the password is whatever you called the kube-prometheus-stack installation. In my case, I called it prom. In the tutorial, it's called prom, and then dash operator, and you will be able to log into it. Then we go to Explorer, and you will find here the data source Loki, okay? And it will show you things that you can look for, okay? This is not going to work since we don't have Tracee installed yet, but you can also head over, I think it's, yeah, here, the configuration data sources. You should see Loki as a data source. You should be able to test it. And we will hope that Loki and Promtail are configured correctly now. So data source connected, but we need to make sure that Loki actually receives information from Promtail, okay? So that's something we have to make sure. Now we go ahead and we install Tracee within our cluster. Tracee, we were gonna just install it out of the box. You have to add Aqua to your Helm Chart repository list. So just go ahead and do that so you have access to all of the Aqua Helm charts. Do another Helm repo update if you haven't already. And now we can just install the Helm chart. And this is the same installation that you will find also in the docs. So we're going to install Tracee, and we're going to call the release Tracee. It's from the Aqua Helm chart repository list. The Helm chart is called Tracee. We're going to create a namespace here and host a pit to true. That's just something you have to do. And then we're going to go ahead and install it and hope everything is working. Awesome. So now we have that. We should be able to look at the logs through a kubectl command, right? Let's just make sure that the pod is running correctly, right? Namespace, Tracee system. Okay, all of our different pods are running. Again, M, F, and Q. All of your nodes should have one of the pods running of Tracee, okay? Now I can look at the logs here directly through K9S. I can look at the different logs if I fancy. And this is one way I could query logs, but it's very difficult to share and actually like correlate logs with my metrics and other things, right? You want to have correlations. You want to be able to compare, okay, the metrics show this service has like a spike of requests. What are the requests about? What are our logs show, right? Things like that, right? You want to be able to compare and synthesize logs and metrics and traces and all those things, right? Beautiful. So we're going to check out the logs of the daemon set, and these are the logs that we would find, right? And this is just going to show me the logs, and I can say kubectl logs. But again, this is like I can copy paste it now from my CLI and be like, post it to somebody, but who's actually going to read that, right? It's very difficult to actually look at it. So next thing. Here you will see the end of the tutorial that I still need to finish. Anyway, now that this is running, we should be able to go to Explorer. And okay, we have logs. Awesome. So everything should be working. So these are all of the logs that I can get from any app that is called Tracee. Okay. So this is just one example of like just access all of your logs. Now in this section in Explorer, you can kind of play around with it, and then you can build dashboards based on that. Now that's going to be, for example, my next step. I'm going to build an example dashboard on accessing actually the logs from Tracee. But here you can basically now go ahead and filter the different logs, for example, by the signatures, by the events that are used and detected within Tracee, things like that. But at least we see now that everything is working properly. Sum, count over time, job, here all of the, I mean, these are the logs from Grafana. They have nothing to do with Tracee. I want to show you how to access Tracee logs. So we do Tracee, I'll delete this, and app Tracee system show logs. These are all of our logs, and we can count them over time and do all kinds of things. So Loki, a base by LogQL, log query language. That's what you have to use. And here's some examples. So we can say, for example, sum over time. So how much did we actually receive over time within the last minute of 30 minutes? Let's say 30 minutes, probably better. Or 15. Run query. Oh, what did I do wrong? I need to delete one of those. Okay. So here you can have sum over time. I'm not sure this is correct, but basically you can start playing around with that. And that's what I'm going to do now to build a nice dashboard. And if you know how to use Loki already, luck you, since I can't remember much of it from my time of using it more, then go ahead, post some of the queries that you're using down in the description. I'm sure other people would love to hear it. Also, like mentioned, this tutorial is in our documentation, or will be in our documentation. So you can find all of the different steps, everything used in the tutorial itself. It will be expanded upon with the dashboard in Grafana that shows the different logs over time from Tracee and similar. So do check that out. If you need the written version, check this out. Check out the tutorial in the Tracee documentation. That's the tutorial, okay? And you will find it right here in the Tracee documentation under tutorials. It will be posted right here. So we have deployed Tracee Grafana dashboard. And then we will have how to access the logs actually. As always, I really hope this video was useful. It would mean a lot to us, to myself, and to the contributors to Tracee if you could give this video a thumbs up. And if you do like Tracee, if you're using it in any way, do give us a star on GitHub. Please, please, please give us a star on GitHub. It would mean a lot to us. Also, do subscribe to our YouTube channel for upcoming videos, tutorials. We have, at the end of the month, we have a live stream on everything that's new in Tracee. Also, link below, the link to the live stream. So do check that out if you're curious, if you want to stay up to date with all of the latest news around Tracee. I really hope to see one of our next videos. Have an amazing week and day or month until then. Bye bye.